بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
سبيل الدموع سبيل مريح، تنهدى يا صاحي كي تستريح، وبث الدعاء الخفي الصريح، يسعك الفضاء الرحيب الفسيح. سبيل الدموع سبيل مريح، تنهدى يا صاحي كي تستريح، وبث الدعاء الخفي الصريح، يسعك الفضاء الرحيب الفسيح.
نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم. أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I'm glad you could join me for part 5, the last of this series, in which we've been looking at our topic of the British Deobandi view on assimilation, integration, hatred, extremism and terrorism. Over the series, over the 4 episodes, you've had opportunity to be able to pick up and understand quite clearly the British Deobandi view and how it's a view which looks to integrate the community rather than isolate the community, but also it does not apologize in defending the Muslim identity so it can't be assimilated. But before we conclude this part, we did finish last week talking about the contractual obligations which are upon the individual, both from an Islamic perspective through the prism of the Deobandi Maslak of the Hanafi Madhab, the Hanafi law, and also through their responsibility as a British citizen. So we were looking at from the state's requirements and from the moral code's requirements. But what does the individual get in return? Particular, what are his citizenship rights? And there we have a long list of citizenship rights and responsibilities. We know, for instance, he has the freedom of movement. He's free to move around in the country as he chooses. He does not need to notify anybody if he's going to travel from one city to another. Also, freedom from arbitrary arrests or unjustified police searches. That's also his right that he possesses. Key one here, freedom of conscience in matters of religion and politics. A very interesting one, and I could really expound upon this one, because what that basically means is he is free to choose and think and believe what he wants to when it comes to his religion and politics. He should not be forced or coerced or pushed into a corner in order to accept other views. That does not mean his is the only view and he should force his view on other people, but his is a view. He has this right, as do all the other citizens have this right to practice it. He is more than legally able to be able to use legal methods of preaching, of disseminating information, of writing, of lecturing, of speaking, whatever he feels, because that gives him the freedom of expression to be able to express these matters in religion and politics. As long as any of these rights and responsibilities, but the key part we're focusing on at the moment is the rights, do not transgress into making into the illegal rather. Also, he has the freedom of association, the right to protest peacefully. He has social freedoms, the right to marry, divorce, procure abortions, and have homosexual relations. These are the rights that he has within the state. He has the right to vote and to stand for election. He has the right to a fair trial. He also has the right not to be coerced or tortured by agents of the state. And finally, he has the right not to be subjected to surveillance without due legal process and the right to own property. So you can see quite clearly there that he has lots of rights which allow him to be what he wants to be. But the key position, the key issue is the freedom of conscience in matters of religion and politics and the freedom of expression. And the way it's portrayed that for a Muslim, and and a particular one who adheres to a traditional understanding of Islam, the normative understanding of Islam, as through the prism of a particular methodology, the Deobandi one at that, which ensures to a process and method to safeguard that identity, then it seems that he is being removed from having this ability to have his conscience in matters of religion and politics and freedom of expression. These are his rights as a citizen. As there's many responsibilities and expectations put on him, then him and her, then he is also able to practice those particular views. So we now reach the conclusions and to draw the end. And I hope that my conclusions don't seem out of place. I hope my conclusions fit and accurately summarize and accurately conclude what I have been discussing over the last 4 parts. So let's look at the first one. The question we wanted to answer, or the query we want to look at, was the British Deobandi view on assimilation, integration, hatred, extremism and terrorism. And that's what I've tried to give you. If I was to turn that into a question, or if I was to problematize it, what is the British Deobandi view on integrating within Britain? What is it? Is it one of isolation leading to hatred and extremism and terrorism? Is that what it's about? Or is it one of assimilation, where all identity and all practices adopt? Or is it one of integration? That's the question that's being posed. But what's on the background is the historical experience that Britain has had with the Deoband Maslak has led it to assume and jump to conclusions without looking at the methodology and the procedure this Maslak adopts. I hope that I've been able to demonstrate what I'm now going to present as the conclusions. Our tradition, the Deobandi tradition, as practiced by our community, does not support adopting belligerent, aggressive, non-integrative stances against the government or our fellow citizens, irrespective of gender, ethnicity, belief. There is nothing within our tradition. Some may argue, but what about the rulings that we find in some of the Deobandi Fatawa books published in India and still published to this day? Don't some of them speak against what I've just put there? They may do. They may do. But it's the methodology that we're talking about, not the rulings, because those scholars were talking in a context which is very different than the British Deobandi scholars. That's very different. The two examples, the two situations are very different. The two contexts are very different. And if we abandon the methodology that the Deobandi apply, then the safeguard which is there to prevent assimilation, the safeguard to ensure the Muslim identity, is removed. But why keep the books? Because through the books we find the methodology. There is no books written, or very few books written as such, by the Deobandi scholars which lay out their methodology. They don't exist. And this is normal practice. You rarely see kind of textbook-like books. What you tend to see is books in which rulings are released and rationale and reasons for those rulings. And the rationale and rulings for those reasons is always about maintaining the Muslim identity, either in a context in which it's a very aggressive, atheistic assimilation, or in a context in which it is a more liberal, free, and more integrative understanding. So the rulings will change even if the methodology remains the same. We've also demonstrated that our community, by practicing Islam as it should, not needing to change, not needing to be modified in any way, meaning maintaining the moral code, because we've already discussed at great length that there is no viability for a law. It's a moral code which is at the bequest of the individuals who want to live by a set of rules, which they approach individuals who possess expertise in that area. That our community, by practicing Islam as it should, is legally, socially and philosophically against the accusations put against about our position against extremism and our view towards our country. Again, this is particularly strongly worded and strongly put because of the media manipulations which are paramount now, where continuously the Deobandi, as it's referred to, sect, even though it's not a sect, is a particular practice, a particular modus operandi, a particular methodology, is considered as extreme or has within it components and processes of hatred, and also then implying that this is the group that you're going to get terrorism from. It's a nonsense. It's clearly incorrect from what I've presented over the last 4 parts. So, key point, none should buy into the media manipulations of what terrorism is. Having said that, we still require an Islamic scholarly position, hence the videos, even though it says video there. Maybe I was hoping when I put these conclusions together that I'd be able to get through these 27 slides or so in one session. But to save you from having to watch about 2.5, 3 hours in one sitting, I've made it in more digestible, manageable chunks. So, what is terrorism? First, that needs to be understood. What is slowly being described as terrorism is Muslims practicing Islam. That's slowly what's being described as terrorism. And when it's not strong enough to fit the bill of terrorism, then that's what's used to describe what extremism is, or hatred. So there's some labeling that's required, and what's being labeled is the Islamic practice, the traditional Islamic practice, as safeguarded by the Deobandi methodology. Citizens of Britain attacking soldiers, police officers, or other members of the emergency service, or fellow citizens, or anybody else for that matter, is the biggest form of deception. We've clearly highlighted through these 4 parts that this is flawed from a legal perspective, social perspective, and a philosophical perspective against Islamic values as interpreted by the Hanafi madhab, as viewed by the Deobandi methodology. So one can't say, well, that's more moderate Muslims are saying this, or nice Muslims are saying that, or whoever else Muslims are saying that, or those Muslims who don't really practice that much, they're saying it. No, this is Muslims from a Deobandi perspective who are clearly understanding their law and understanding how different circumstances bring about different rulings, but at no cost, at no point does it mean that one can deceive. So that's a key point to bear in mind. I did give a hint that there's 27 slides, so you'd be happy to know that we're soon coming to an end. And that leaves us with some action and some words of advice. Because there's no point listening to these and then sort of saying, well, that's great. There needs to be an approach we need to take. First thing is, I personally would like to take this opportunity to say that we will not apologize for standing up against any policy or open Islamophobia or Islamophobic comments from the media and other sectors in their efforts to assimilate our community. We are Muslims. That's a key point. We are Muslims. That needs to be understood. And our Muslimness is not having effect on anybody else whatsoever. We are not pushing our Muslimness onto anybody else, and you've seen that throughout these parts, that there's a legal reason how we behave in the manner we behave, and that is to live in an integrated way as equal partners for the benefit of our country in order for it to succeed. And this is not based on some wishy-washy sort of PR process, but more so deeply embedded and grounded in an understanding of the Hanafi madhab, again, as portrayed by the Deobandi position. But that's a point, we want to say that, because, why should we apologize for being Muslim, for crying out loud? Why should we apologize for stopping being assimilated by certain sectors and the media? Why certain parts of the media? Why should we? We are what we are. We shouldn't be afraid of saying that. Why? Because our rights as citizens allows us. We will exercise our right as British citizens to freedom of conscience in matters of religion and politics, to freedom of expression. Those very same freedoms which are offered to our four fellow co-citizens, they are also offered to us. So we can be Muslims and citizens. And as we are citizens, we have the freedom of conscience in matters of religion and politics, and we should be allowed to do so. We are not doing anything illegal. All we're doing is hold particular views, particular beliefs, which have repercussions in our dress, in our diet, in our behavior. And none of those areas, whether it's dress, diet, behavior, or anything else for that matter, are breaking any UK laws. So if the Muslims are not breaking any UK laws, if the Deobandis, as perceived, the Deobandi methodology itself is not breaking any laws, it clearly has here in this particular set of 5 videos, we've seen clearly their position, and we've clearly seen the difference between what we saw in India centuries or so ago and what we're seeing here in the UK is a clear position. So we don't agree with current trends demanding Muslim assimilation, because the Deobandi methodology is to safeguard Iman. The Deobandi methodology is to safeguard Islamic identity. That is its methodology. And we can't abandon that methodology, because by abandoning that, we would be abandoning our Muslimness, and we would be removing a part of us which makes us who we are. And when we see this kind of forced assimilation, this aggressive atheistic assimilation, what comes from that is a position of isolation. And as you saw, going back all the way to part 1, it is the isolation element which then has it within there due to fear. Fear then gets led to suspicion. Suspicion goes to mistrust. Mistrust goes to hatred. Hatred builds to extremist views, which are the most likely place to where any potential terrorist behavior is going to come from. So, we will use all our efforts to stand up against it. In fact, it's our Britishness. It's our Britishness, it's our stubborn Britishness, it's our stiff upper lip as British citizens, which means that we will have the freedom of conscience in our matters of religion and politics. So arguably, it's the Britishness in us that's causing us to do this, not anything else. But we're not saying we'll be successful, because that rests with the Almighty. But rest assured, there are organizations, individuals and scholars working to achieve that, and in the process safeguard our religion and our practice of that religion. Final point, some concluding advice before I disappear and drink some water and cater for my sore throat. Concluding advice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al Imran, ayat 139, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Don't give up. Don't, kind of suddenly just wave the white flag. Don't, despair. Don't grieve. وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. Don't feel sad. Don't feel depressed. That's not the Muslim way. Why? وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. You will be the successful. You will become successful. You will achieve what you want to achieve. Based on what? In kuntum mu'minin. If you are true believers. Not just in kuntum mu'minin, because this is not just about bringing Iman. This is about being true believers. Sticking to our religiousness. Sticking to our Islam. Not at the harm or expense of anybody else, has been explained thoroughly over these last five episodes. And finally, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Surah Ra'd, partial ayat number 11. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not change that which is with the people until they change that which is within themselves. So we see here, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. You can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not change that which is with the people until they change that which is within themselves. You can see when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about that which is with the people, He says He will not change the collective situation the individuals are in. So their collective situation won't change. Their total situation won't change. Hatta, until they change that which is within themselves individually. So individual change will bring about a collective change from Allah. And it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is going to bring that change. So action is important. Get involved. Okay, don't sit on the sidelines. Be a cheerleader. There's nothing wrong with being cheerleaders. But also try to get involved. Offer your services. Whatever you're capable of doing, offer your services. Whether it's a local Islamic school, whether it's a charity, whether it's a board of ulama, whatever it may be, there might be some skills you have. You might be a website designer, you might be whatever. Offer those skills. Offer that to those organizations. And if they don't need your skills or whatever, then make dua for them. Contribute with your charity. Contribute with your donations. I can't see them refusing that, to be honest. And the key point is that continue to, and this parting advice, continue to be upbeat. Continue to be optimistic. You have a lot to offer to the world. And you have a lot to offer to the British society. What can be seen as a potential problem, turn that into an opportunity. Here's an opportunity for Muslims to show their good behavior, for Muslims to show their charitable side, for Muslims to show their decency, for Muslims to show how they deal with people and not get angry or not become lose heart so quickly. So it is an opportunity to be able to show that side of it. So before I go, I hope I've been somewhat successful in being able to answer or deal with that issue, that question that we highlighted, or that point that we made, the British Deobandi view on assimilation, integration, hatred, extremism and terrorism. You've seen that the Deobandi methodology has always been about safeguarding the religion, safeguarding Muslim identity. It opposes assimilation. So any Muslim is a Deobandi Muslim if he is one who stands against assimilation. And this is not a sect we're talking about. We sometimes have this weird view that it's a particular sect. It isn't. What this is a methodology. That's all. It's a name of a village. It's a name of an institute. It's a methodology. And what was the methodology about? What was its philosophy? What was at the crux of its philosophy? Was to safeguard Islamic identity, both in beliefs and practice. That's what it was about. And no one could disagree with that. Any sound Muslim cannot disagree with that. But we've explained how sometimes they've been misinterpreted, or either intentionally misinterpreted, or individuals are misinforming people about the Deobandi view to give it this British, anti-Western, against integrating and living within society. That couldn't be further from the truth. And we've explained why the reason for the position adopted in India compared to the position which scholars are adopting now. That's the position that we've adopted both within the conclusions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and those who are listening the benefit of what's been said. Ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana. And alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanaka lamu bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
كي تستريح وبث الدعاء الخفي الصريح يسعك الفضاء الرحيم الفريح.